everyone. My name is Julian. I'm a customer success agent at UXPressia.
And I'm Veronica. You might have seen me hosting previous events, but today I'm joining Julia to talk about collaborative customer journey mapping.
Yes, and in our interaction with clients, me and Victoria often hear about, from our clients, we hear about their struggle on working all together, on building and working with journey maps in general. And that is why we decided to make a third part of the third event and to share some tips that might be helpful for you to make your mapping altogether more efficient. Before we start, I actually would like to present what's UXPressia. For those who are new here, you probably saw this small video at the very beginning in the wait room. But one more time, UXPressia is an online platform that helps to build customer journey maps, persona profiles, and impact maps. Besides the platform, we also have UXPressia Academy available with its online educational courses on different mapping related topics. Plus, we love holding events. It helps us to connect with you, with our audience, and share some useful advice that probably you might implement in your journey mapping. As Yulia already mentioned, we had a couple of events before, and we already talked about the foundation of any customer journey mapping activity, which is planning. We also already talked about synchronous collaboration, and we covered the pros and cons of such collaboration, spoke about the challenges and some tips that might be helpful to overcome those challenges. In today's session, we will be referring to some of the ideas mentioned in these previous events, but the main focus is going to be on asynchronous collaboration. It's another way of working together with your team or client. So, asynchronous collaboration. I have one important note here. Even though we are going to focus on this specific way of collaborating all together, it doesn't mean that you need to exclude the synchronous work from your journey mapping initiative, because we believe that the combination of both these approaches works best. So we encourage you to think, to plan ahead what you can use, what you can do in synchronous mode together at the same time, and what you can actually leave for async collaboration.
And just like any other collaboration, asynchronous collaboration has its pros and cons. So we'll start with the more pleasant thing, and we will start with the pros. So what are the advantages of the synchronous collaboration? First of all, it gives the flexibility to work together when simultaneous work is not possible. And that can be for various reasons, because of busy schedules, or let's say because of the different time zones. And also, it allows you to include people who otherwise just wouldn't be able to participate in any kind of workshop or collaboration. So what are the challenges of the asynchronous collaboration? The first one, and probably the biggest challenge here, is a longer feedback loop. Because when you're all together in a virtual room or in a physical office, it is very easy to get feedback. You did something in the map, you showed it, you get feedback, you fixed it, and here it is. But when you're working asynchronously, the feedback loop is much longer. It may take hours or days, well, even weeks, for everyone to fill in the data, to review the map, to leave some feedback, and so on and so on and so on. Another challenge here is switching between contexts. If you imagine your regular workday, I believe it will look pretty much like this. You will have a lot of daily routine, you will have emails that keep piling up, you will have meetings and calls, and you will have some urgent tasks occurring, and you're switching between all of these contexts like all day long. And somewhere in between of all these things, you need to find time and think about strategic things like a customer journey.
This is quite challenging. And the last part, the last challenge here would be different context. So every collaborator is working in the same tasks while being in a different settings in their own routine that I mentioned, not in the same room. So being in these different contexts might, they might understand different things in a different ways. So this also might be a struggle. But no worries, because we have some tips how to overcome those challenges. And the first one would be to take context into account. Yes, you should take this context into account when you estimate the time for customer journey mapping initiative. Because obviously when you update a finished map with some info inside, this will require about half an hour from your time. But if you haven't seen the map for a while and you need just more time, you need another hour or even more to delve into the context and to get up to speed, right? So when you plan those, when you allocate the time for the initiative, you just need to keep this in mind. Another case that might happen, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you work with different tasks. You read the map in the chunks of time that you have between meetings, between your daily routine. And obviously, when you have a question, you ask it, you wait for a couple of hours to get this response. So it's also something that you should keep in mind when you plan the time for this initiative. And second tip here would be to do whatever you can to help people orient themselves when they open the map. Of course, it's not easy to fully grasp the whole big journey when you see it for the first time, and especially if it was not you who filled in this journey. So if you are a facilitator of the process, we encourage you to help your team members to do whatever you can to make it easier for them to orient themselves in the map. And we actually have some advice on that point that we would like to show you at UXPressia platform. So basically, when you have multiple maps in your workspace, you can build a kind of a hierarchy of those documents to show your team members the overall structure of all the maps, this journey mapping ecosystem that you have, and also to show the place of the specific map in the whole journey mapping ecosystem. And to UXPressia, we have one feature that might be helpful in this case. You probably hear my cat meowing. He's supporting me as he can. Yeah, sorry. What do we have here? We have this design view. Switching to this, you will actually see this structure. You can build this structure and visualize the place of the specific customer journey in the whole journey mapping ecosystem. So I would like to use this map as an example for you today. And as you can see, this map is a strategic level map, is a high level map. And we see that there is another map, tactical level map, which is connected to this high level journey. So we see usage journey, and this is just one stage of this bigger level journey. So we show the connection. Then there is another journey, which is an operational level. So we can show even deeper how these maps are interconnected. And this actually helpful. When your team members see the whole structure, you can move to the map. And today, as I told you already, told you that I'm going to use this journey map as an example. And here, what else you can include? You can add description, map description, which will be actually a summary or a history of what has been done so far. And yes, we at UXPressia like to use this map description section as it's located right above the map and allows you to add any kind of info which will not interfere with the map's content. So as you can see here, we have one block which actually represents what has been done, what's currently in progress, and what is planned. Besides, you can also use tooltips functionality that might be helpful if you want to give some explanation of your these sections in your map, right? So once you hover over the section name, you will see the default tooltip that appears right here, and you can either use these default ones or customize it up to your needs. It's also possible to do. And another thing that you can use if you still feel that, okay, I would like a little bit more examples, even more guidance for my team, you can still use sections and stages of the map itself, right? So we have included this section right here with some tips for workshop participants, with some examples and tips that might make the whole process a bit easier for our team members. So when can you go for async collaboration? There are actually multiple situations when it's an option. And we would like to share how your goals will define the strategies that you should apply while planning such collaboration. And usually when we speak about customer journey mapping collaboration, we keep in mind these two modalities, building a map and working with the map. And if we speak, so these modalities obviously differ as they have different contexts in mind. And if we speak about the first modality, building the map, it means that we would like to get the map as a visual representation of our customer's journey. But with working with the map, we want to generate ideas based on the map that is already built. In our today's case, we're going to focus on the first scenario, but the second one also will be covered on our next event.
So building the map, let's take a look at some of the scenarios where you can work asynchronously. This might be finishing what started during the workshop, building an entire map asynchronously, and validating and adding more information. We will walk you through each of these scenarios one by one, and we will tell you about the challenges. Well, they won't be that challenging as the previous challenges were. And we will give you some tips on how you can make the collaboration smoother and easier. An important note here is that, well, I must admit that, but some of the challenges might not be resolvable for you. And you might ask yourself then, why are they going to tell us about them? The reason is that being aware of them and knowing our tips on how you can overcome them might help you to find the best approach that will work for you and for your team to mitigate them and make your synchronous collaboration as perfect as it can be. So let's start with the most common scenario, which is finishing what started during the workshop, right? So imagine that you had a workshop where you built a part of the map or where you discussed the map structure. And now the whole team needs to finish what they started at the workshop in the synchronous mode. So what are the challenges here? So people tend to forget what some points mean, and it might be unclear what needs to be done after the workshop. Because when we all are in the same place, in the same room, working at the same time, everything seems to be crystal clear for us. But when we leave the context and when we switch to our daily routine and then in a while get back to journey mapping, there is no surprise that the map might seem a little bit unfamiliar. So now I have a question for you, and Yulia will be sharing the poll with you. What is actually, which of these challenges did you run into? Would really love to know if you have if you ever faced them. You will have about like 30 seconds. So let's move on with the tips. So what can you do to mitigate these risks? So first of all, take time to design the final part of the workshop. Make sure to allocate some time at the end of your workshop for everyone to ask their questions, to make sure that everyone is on the same page when wrapping up. Also, you can ask teams to write down their homework as clearly as possible to avoid misunderstanding.
So at UXPressia, you still can use map description section to show this. And this one will also work for specifying what you expect from your team members and write down the tasks that you want them to do, actually. And right here, as you can see, we have this block, what we expect from different teams to do by October. But besides just using the plain text for outlining the tasks that you want for your team members, you can also use checklists. And right here, we have this to-do list in the form of checklists. It's really easy to do. You just need to highlight this text and easily convert them in checklists like that. And then just mention your team members right next to the task. When your team members complete the task, they will be able to cross it off the list. Also, feel free to use different emojis, as you can see here, different color coding to prioritize those tasks and make it even more visual for your team members.
And let's move on to another tip here, which is design not just one workshop, but keep in mind the whole process. So it is important to consider your collaboration not just a step-by-step process, but also to have a look at a bigger picture of it. So when preparing for collaboration, think about what the homework is going to look like, when you're going to review the map, and actually who is going to validate, to participate in the validation process. Our next tip here is to prepare the ground. It is important to understand that it is okay not to remember some things about the journey map in a while after you leave the workshop context. So, for example, people tend to make some short notes in the map during their online workshop or offline workshop, which are super clear when everybody is in the same context, when everybody is working on the same map, and when everybody is in this space. But when they get back to the map in a while, it is quite clear, sometimes it happens that they have no idea what those notes left, what those notes meant when actually people were leaving them. So what is the piece of advice here? First of all, if you're just planning the workshop, find some time in the beginning or maybe somewhere during the workshop to tell people about this thing, that this can happen, and ask them to leave notes as clearly as possible, to make them as specific as possible, so that they don't forget about it like in a while, in a week or in 2 weeks, or whenever they plan to get back to working with the map. Or if it happens so that your workshop has already happened, think if you can find some time to go over all of these comments and ask people to clarify what they meant when they left those comments. Well, but make sure not to put it off till they forget about that. Make sure to do it as soon as possible.
And the next tip would be to organize subteams to work on the maps parts. It's always easier to work on some smaller bits of the map rather than to ask everyone to work on this big map. And if you are a facilitator, again, what you can do is to split people into smaller teams and give a team a part of the map to work on. Then once they're ready, you can ask them to meet up, because obviously for 2-3 people, it's much easier to meet up rather than ask everyone to synchronize. And they will be able to discuss to finalize some parts of the map. And of course, working together in small groups is much more productive rather than struggling alone on this big map. So let me show you how you can do this at UXPressia. Here we have a specific feature that might be really helpful for you. Views. So at the very top panel, you see that right now this map is in a default view, but we can split it into views for specific teams. So first of all, we need to name our view. I will name it for Sarah and Tanya. And then what we need to do is to configure which sections, which stages and substages and personas will be visible and which we will make invisible for this specific view. And for Sarah and Tanya, I would like to leave a couple of stages for them to focus, and all other stages we will hide. Just like that. Yes. So we save the view and the map shrinks to more compact size. Right now, Sarah and Tanya will be able to focus on these specific stages and will not be distracted by some other content. But here there is also one note: you can always get back to default view. So if you want to see the whole map, you can always do this.
Let's get back to our next tip, which is set up an initiative chat or a channel. It might be a really great idea to have a separate chat in a messenger or to have a channel in Slack or Discord. And that will be the place where everybody can share their opinions, ask questions, or compare some approaches. And sometimes it is not easy to be the first one to, well, ask anything or share anything. So as a facilitator, you can throw in some conversation starters just to ease the tension.
Next tip would be to provide input for those who were not at the workshop. So it's one challenge to get people back into the context when they participated in the workshop after a while, but if it's complete other thing if they never visited the workshop, right? So for you as a facilitator, you just need to make the whole process a little bit easier for your teammates and make a kind of a map guidance or overview of the map throughout the whole map. And we also have some useful features that might help you in this case. And right here, to do this map overview, you can use commenting mode. So I will switch into the commenting mode, and you can use recording comments functionality in order to leave different guidance throughout the whole map. So it's really easy to do. As you can see, we have some recorded here already, but you can pin your comment anywhere, like literally anywhere on the map, and easily record your instruction, your information that you want to leave here. Also, if you want to be notified every time your colleague leaves a comment, you can enable these notifications right here. This bottom right corner, just enable notification and you will be notified by email.
Now that we're done with our first part, which was finishing what studied during the workshop, now we're moving to the second scenario, which is building an entire map asynchronously. So mapping is a collaborative effort, and it really requires enough space for conversation and for exchange. But sometimes it happens so that the teams just don't have other choice as to start building the map asynchronously. And there can be various reasons for that. And one of them might be, let's say, that the team just doesn't have time for all to meet in for a workshop, for example. And this can be because the team, let's imagine that this is a multinational team that is scattered across like 5 different time zones. and they just cannot find any suitable time slot for all of them to meet. So let's now talk about the challenges that can be in this scenario and see the ways how to eliminate them. So the first challenge here, and probably one of the most important ones, is that the map has no consistency. And it is quite natural because the map is filled by different people with different thinking and writing styles. And as a result, if there is no control, the map might look a little bit hectic. Secondly, collaborators tend to skip filled-in sections. Imagine that you are working on the map and you've just started, and you look at the map and you see that some of the sections are already filled. And you have some findings or some information that you think that might be relevant here. But when you see those filled-in sections, you're left wondering, will it add any value if I add this information? Is it worth adding? Does it really make any sense to add something? And this can be quite a problem. But there can be an opposite situation when teams are really shy to add points to empty sections. And probably this can be explained by the fear of the blank page, when it really takes some courage to be the first one to add some findings into any section or to the map itself. And the last challenge here is that someone just didn't do their homework. And this is extremely common in asynchronous collaboration, that you had an agreement, you had your homework, then you come to the map and you see that someone didn't do their part. Why could it happen? Among the most common reasons here, we see the lack of time. Let's say the team does journey mapping as a side project and they already have a lot on their plate. Or there is a lack of belief in the initiative, or there can be a lack of understanding just how to do it. And in any case, this is something to discuss, and it's something that can be resolved.
So what you can actually do with those challenges. So the very first thing is to provide examples, hints, and show the way. Make sure that you provide as specific tasks as possible and back them up with some examples. At UXPressia, we like to use this first column of the map, where we have some framing questions, some tips on how to fill in the section. This will be really helpful for those who have this fear of the blank page that Veronica mentioned a little bit earlier. And also, you as a facilitator can pre-fill some of the sections yourself, so you set an example and others will follow. Next tip would be to engage people into consistency checking. So no matter how much you pre-plan your collaboration, there still will be some inconsistency in how the map is filled in. What you can do about this? Well, you just need to accept that this is inevitable, but you can actually plan a peer review. And it's really easy when you have sub-teams that works on halves of the map. You can just ask them to swap and review the other parts of the map, where they can highlight some unclearness, something that is debatable, questionable, and so on. Another tip here would be to make sure that all the participants have enough time to invest in the initiative. Well, collaboration might be quite time-consuming, and it makes sense to communicate with your team's supervisors to ensure that your team has enough time to contribute. And this way, the supervisors will be able to distribute tasks accordingly. It also makes sense to normalize saying, I need more time. This might be, here might be two extremes. You know, when some people, they prefer to work overtime, to stay overtime and to get everything done. no matter what. But some people, they will say, okay, I need more time, but they will do this like in 1 hour before the deadline. So here it's important to make it clear that yes, it's totally fine to need more time, but please let us know like 1 day in advance, for instance, before the deadline. And the last tip here is to make yourself available for short meetings. Obviously, if you are the one who is responsible for the whole initiative, and if you have enough time, you have the capacity, it makes sense to organize small meetings, one-on-one or small group meetings, calls, for example, for 15, 30 minutes, where you can help your team members if they feel stuck, and if they don't know how to proceed, you can just, help them to get unstuck and to move forward.
The last scenario that we are going to cover today is validating and adding more information. So very often teams build the map using assumptions and guesses. And after that, they need to check or validate if those assumptions were true. So this is the part where asynchronous collaboration comes to the rescue. And this approach is this is a very common approach, and really many teams use asynchronous collaboration, especially on this stage. So as we do today, let's start with the challenges in this scenario. So the first challenge here is that there is difference in understanding what validating means, because every organization sets the rules in their own way. And for some of them, it is important that it is enough to have several signals about the problem that were mentioned during the interviews with clients. While for the others, it might be crucial to back every statement in the map with some quantitative data. And when the team has no idea about what the criteria are for validating, that might be a great challenge. The second point here is that the validating team might just basically have no time or no resources to back up every statement in the map. Let's say that the team has highlighted all the statements in the map that, in their opinion, require some checking or additional research. And they got a list of 15 things. So it seems like it's not very difficult. So it's pretty easy to just go and check them all. But what if there are like 100 or even more? It basically is overwhelming for everybody and sometimes not worthy. Also, validation requires some sense making, and sense making requires conversations, which are not that easy in the synchronous mode. Also, it is quite often that the team has more than one source of data to fill in the map. And that can be interviews with clients, that can be the service the company conducted, some web analytics, or maybe the info from the customer-facing employees. And it might be really difficult to understand how to incorporate all those sorts of data into one map. And the last challenge here is that it might be not clear who is responsible for adding some specific information into the map. And it is especially it happens if your organization doesn't have a dedicated researcher, for example, who will do this part. And for some people, it is surprising that when at the end of the workshop, they learn that they need to do some kind of an interview with customers or something like that to fill in the map. And it is not good because it might influence general attitudes into the initiative.
So the very first tip that I want to share you is setting up some rules. So when you're not sure about what validation is and you're not on the same page about this with your team members, things can go quite messy, right? So it makes sense to come up with a scale that works for your team. And we like to use the following. If this is repeated at least once, we take it. Or we have this another approach, assumption, soft signal, strong signal. Let me explain what we mean by that. So, for instance, you have a brand new menu in your restaurant, and it's quite hard to read. And if someone from your team mentioned it once, for instance, or maybe some of the clients, one client just mentioned about that, you count it as an assumption. If there were several mentions that your menu is a little bit hard to read, like 3, you count it as soft signal. And this is something also important. Do not dismiss this. But if you heard like from 10 clients that, okay, your menu is quite hard to read, you need to count it as strong signal. And well, obviously, it's not about the quantitative proof here. This is something that is that can be customized, let's say, per company, because some organizations will use like 10 mentions as a strong signal, but for some, 100 mentions will be a strong signal. So you just need to agree on this point. The next tip here is to prioritize and encourage others to prioritize as well. So get on the same page about the priorities. You can use the questions like, which statements significantly influence how we move forward? For example, if the problem with checking into the hotel is rather an exception, then it happens not so frequently, we can disregard it. But if it happens often, we need to direct our attention there. So let's validate. Next is discuss roles at the very beginning of the initiative. It's really good if you work with a team and you have these roles distributed already. In this case, you just need to communicate this once again. But if this is the team that was created, for example, specifically for this project, it makes sense to synchronize and to have this high level understanding of jobs to be done and who is responsible for what. Like whether research and validation, refining and polishing the map will be one person's responsibility, or you will split it between different team members. And another thing here is some of your teammates might need to edit the map and work actively to fill in the sections and stuff like that, while others need just to leave some feedback, some comments. And at UXPressia, we also have the way how you can distribute those permissions between different team members. Let me get back to our platform once again, so I could show you how to do that. You can share your project with your team members in 2 ways. We have this email invite. This is relevant for those who have account at UXPressia, but you also can specify which permissions they will have, viewers or editors. And also you can enable direct link access, protected with password if needed, and again, specify which permissions your audience will have to view the map and to leave comments or to edit the cells. So here we already talked today. What we mentioned today is how to specify, how to assign different tasks to your team members using checklists, for instance. Also, we talked about splitting the map into views and sharing specific views with this view feature. But there is one more thing that might actually be helpful and might let you go even deeper on the touchpoint level. So let me scroll till the touchpoint section. Here it is. So obviously, if you have like touch points that you outline in your customer journey, you might want to specify who is responsible for the touch point in order to make it a little bit easier for everyone else. First, so that they know whom they should connect in case of questions. For instance, if you have any questions regarding this touch point, who should I right to. And also it's really convenient to have someone that will actually be responsible for filling in all the info regarding this touchpoint, for updating the information, for tracking how this touchpoint is performing. So at UXPressia, you can easily assign ownership to the touchpoint in our touchpoint card. So right here, you can select those from your team members who you want to specify as owners and simply save this information. Then everyone will know that Nina, in this case, is the one who they should contact about regarding this touch point. Yes, and the last tip for today would be to get a second pilot. Speaking of having a second pilot, they should not be like pros in research. It's just a helping hand for you, especially if you doing something online, if you have some activities online, this is a must. Actually, this is really helpful. So if you work with some departments that is pretty new for you, it also makes sense to have the second pilot, so like a representative from the team that you never worked with. And this person might help you to facilitate the whole thing, to plan everything. So yeah, this is a really convenient help in this case.
We've covered most of the scenarios that we planned for today on how you can work asynchronously when building a journey map. So let's sum it up a little bit. So we've covered 3 scenarios of asynchronous journey mapping, and I will remind you of them just in case. This was finishing with study during the workshop, building an entire map asynchronously, and validating and adding more information. Also, we've introduced some challenges the teams face in these scenarios and mentioned that some of them might not be resolvable, but at the same time, we provided you with some tips on how you can overcome those challenges and show you some UXPressia features that might help you to ease the collaboration. But as was said at the very beginning of this workshop, journey mapping is a journey. And after you're finally done with building a map, it's time to work with the map, to ideate, to plan things out, and to update it and keep it alive. And that we will cover at our next event on November 10th.
Thank you so much, Veronica, Julia. And actually, as I promised at the very beginning, one more expert will be joining us here today. And our colleague Jana is anthropologist, org designer, and facilitator who has an experience helping companies to implement journey mapping and human-centered approach as a consultant. So she might have a great addition to all the tips that Veronica and Julia mentioned here earlier. Jana, would you mind joining us for the Q&A?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you, Yulia, for such great introduction, and hello, everyone.
Okay, awesome. I actually see some questions here. So let's start with the first one from Diana. Can you please explain with clear words what you mean with getting a second pilot? Jana, I believe you have an experience of having a second pilot during your projects, so you might as well start.
Oh, yes, yes. And I had an experience of not having one, which is even better to understand the value of that. So basically, second pilot means a person who also understands like the goal, the process you have, and who can back you up. Because if, especially with online facilitation, but with live as well, if you, for example, working with a group of, let's say, 10 people or 15 people, it is not always easy to like conduct workshop or session and guide people and also notice like questions, reactions, maybe trouble people having. Of course, like if you facilitating alone, you can do all that, especially experienced facilitators. But it is much better to have a second pilot who kind of like understands where you're going and also can back you up, and can this way you can give more attention to individual participants if they have questions. So it is really helpful. And as I believe Ledis also mentioned before, sometimes it's a great idea to kind of like prepare this person in advance before the session, but the person from the team you're working with, so they also know the team and understand like maybe like internal dynamics or some challenges they have like beyond the workshop. And yeah, that also could be very helpful in terms of getting better results together. I hope that answers that. If not, I can try again.
If you want to see more events like this, make sure to check the upcoming ones at UXPressia.eventbrite.com or check the recordings we've got on this channel. Take care, and I will see you around.